This episode is brought to you by 180 Markets, where it is our goal to bring every individual, fund manager, family office, or any qualified investor access to Australian Stock Exchange capital raises. If you are ever interested in how to access ASX capital raises in a super simple way, 180 Markets is for you. The sign-up process is easy. You just upload your ID, proof of your investor status, and your current brokerage account information. The settlement of shares goes right into your existing account, and you can access our very next capital raise. If you're interested in free, easy access to thousands of ASX capital raises, including placements, IPOs, reverse takeovers, and more, check out 180markets.com.au. Hello, investors. Friends, everybody's a little bit nervous in the markets right now, worried about inflation, commodity pricing, housing, whatever it may be, all of these big macro issues. But maybe we're looking at it wrong. Why don't we instead focus on situation-specific, stock-specific companies that have much of their upside potential within their control? And that's why I'm really excited today to talk with such a company with you, with James Campbell of Patrys, a company that is trying to fight that big elephant of cancer. That's right. And as an investor, it's a very stock-specific situation, so we don't need to worry about all the macro events in the world. We can just focus on the business at hand. And here to discuss all about it, and also some very positive recent developments. James, welcome to 18 Minutes with 180 Markets.
Thanks, Greg. Great to be with you today.
Hey, James, everyone wants to know a story or people's stories. Can you just tell us in a few minutes about your background?
Sure. So a long time ago, I did a PhD in biochemistry. I did all the things you would expect of a scientist. I went and did a postdoc overseas. I came back and worked in Australia. And then after a while, decided that there were other things I wanted to do. Did an MBA, ended up working for a management consulting company and then working in venture capital in biotech. And then about 20 years ago, joined what was then called Autogen, became a listed company called Chemgenics, with Greg Collier, who's a fantastic guy to work with. And over the course of 9 years, we bought an asset for, I think, $14 million out of the US. We raised $70 million and then sold the company after completing 2 pivotal phase 2s for 230, which was a really great learning experience. After that, I was the right-hand man at a private company out of UC Davis, so a microbiome company, and then have been with Patrys for 6 years now.
Absolutely, and maybe we can touch on it later, but what's great is that you really can understand the entire cycle of biotech, of really taking something from the nascent, the very, very early stage to commercialization. It really takes all those various skill sets, and certainly you possess them given your background. And specifically, moving on to Patrys, can you just discuss a little bit about the company from a high level? What is it, the problem you're trying to solve, and how you're going about it?
Sure. So Patrys is a therapeutic antibody company, and our focus is cancer, as you've said. Cancer comes in many shapes and forms, and some cancers are really well treated, and other cancers are treated really poorly in terms of therapeutic outcome. What's important to understand when we think about therapies generally is the divergence between what we call small molecule therapeutics, so which are bits of chemistry that a chemistry teacher would have drawn on a blackboard or a whiteboard when we were in school, versus biologics. And biologics generally means antibodies. And over the last 20 years, antibodies have become a really dominant force in the treatment of cancer. Pharmaceutical companies and patients like antibodies because they're targeted and because their side effect profiles are really benign compared to many small molecules. So Patrys is an antibody development company. We have what we call the deoxymab platform, which is a range of different antibody formats we've developed that do something called block the DDR system, or the DNA damage repair system, which causes cancer cell death. There are a range of modalities we can work with there. The key attributes of our platform is that we work via synthetic lethality as a single agent, or our agents work in combination with chemotherapies or radiation therapies. And of course, the really interesting attribute which focuses our efforts at the moment is the fact that unlike any other therapeutic antibody, our deoxymabs can cross the blood-brain barrier, which opens vistas around treating both primary and secondary brain cancers, which is just very, very exciting for us.
Absolutely. And again, maybe just to keep it at a high level. So in other words, previously, or the way that a lot of cancers are treated right now, as many of us unfortunately know, there's a lot of stuff thrown at the cancer through, say, chemotherapy, which obviously can, significantly kill off a lot of cancers, but unfortunately causes a huge amount of side effects. So in a way, is Patrys trying to, narrow down the target focus, and then I guess, treating it, in this specific area of brain cancer? Is that a good way to frame it?
Well, so it's a really interesting question, and whilst we've shown that our deoxymabs are active on a range of different cancers throughout the body. So, for instance, we've seen great results in triple-negative breast cancer. We've seen strong results in colon cancer. The fact that we have this real differentiator of being able to get our agents into the brain really hones our mind towards brain cancers. So our deoxymabs work in a range of different cancers, but the fact that they really work in brain cancers as well kind of skews out the positioning of the asset in that way. Absolutely.
Absolutely. So it sounds like the choice is almost made for you in a sense if it's working in the brain effectively. There's nothing else really out there, I suppose, at this moment. And it's also, frankly, from a commercialization point of view, a big enough target market that it certainly makes it worthwhile as a business.
Yeah, absolutely. So the brain's incredibly challenging from a therapeutic point of view, or from a pharmaceutical point of view. So when we think about these small molecules, I think it's only about 2% of them have been shown that they can cross the blood-brain barrier. And as I said, there are no antibodies that are known, therapeutic antibodies, to cross the blood-brain barrier for cancer. So the differentiation we have there is really strong. Obviously, there are other ways of treating cancers, and brain cancers historically, the therapeutic options are very limited. Pharmaceutical options are limited. So the therapeutic options have been limited to surgery and radiation. We see the development of an antibody for brain cancers as a real game changer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can't imagine that a lot of the current treatments do have a lot of side effects and frankly, a lot of risks, for sure. Um, from a timing point of view, you've recently had some very positive results. I believe it's within the last 30 days, in fact. Can you just discuss them a little bit?
Sure. Always happy to talk data, Greg.
Okay.
And I'd stress that this is animal data. So we're still 12 months or so away from our phase 1 first in human study. But these animal studies were all conducted at Yale. And as I said, we're interested in both primary and secondary forms of cancer. If we think about metastases, for instance, triple-negative breast cancer is the more challenging form of breast cancer. 10 to 15% of breast cancer patients develop this thing called triple-negative breast cancer, and up to 50% of patients with TNBC develop brain metastases. And really, if there are a small number of metastases, the prognosis can be quite good with targeted radiation therapy. But for multiple metastases, the prognosis is actually very poor for those patients. So for instance, we've shown in an animal model of metastatic triple-negative breast cancer that we can, by treating with Patrys, with PAT-DX1, we can reduce the metastasis by about 93% and increase the median survival by about 45%. So that gives us really a lot of enthusiasm. That's for a metastatic disease. When we think about primary brain cancers, the most common form of primary brain cancer is glioblastoma. Glioblastoma, you'll remember, is the disease that claimed John McCain and Beau Biden and Teddy Kennedy. So when we think about glioblastoma, we've done some studies there as well. And we've shown that PAT-DX1, again, reduces tumor size and increases survival by approximately 47%. And then when we think about combining PAT-DX1 with the existing paradigms of treatment, which are radiation, we see even better results, like a 71% increase in survival. So really strong data, published in a great journal. So it's been a very satisfying month for Patrys.
Absolutely. I mean, those, as you said, look, it's early days. We're not even in phase 1 yet, but the data, and science is really about data, is certainly compelling at this point. And maybe, it's a good sign to talk about, what is the future, because there's certainly enough to go on there to, to press forward. In your mind, what do the next 12 months look like for you?
So again, it's how long's a piece of string, really, Greg. Patrys has been built around advancing our lead asset, which is the antibody we call PAT-DX1, and that's the asset that we're fully invested in. That's the asset that we'll take into the clinic mid next year. So if we just think about Patrys as being that one asset, what are the de-risking steps, I suppose, there? We're going through the manufacturing, the scale up for that asset at the moment. The de-risking steps are showing you've got a stable cell line and a master cell bank so that you can repeatedly make the antibody. Then showing that you can scale up production so you can make meaningful amounts of product for your clinical trial and for commercialization. So we've pretty much de-risked those first 2 steps, and manufacturing we're working on at the moment and hope to be able to report on in Q3 this year. And then you move into toxicology, which is scheduled for Q4, and then moving into the clinic in mid 2022, ideally. So they're the value inflection points around DX1, and really important to keep in mind that these are the things you need to do to start a clinical trial, but these are also the risk amelioration steps that potential acquirers are looking at. And when we look at cancer antibodies, we see that 60% of cancer antibodies are transacted, so licensed or sold, prior to them going into the clinic. So that's something that we certainly keep in mind. And that's very different than small molecules where the transaction point is usually after a phase 2 study. So, sorry, Greg, let me just go on. So that's if we focus on DX1, but we've been very fortunate over the last 9 months or so since our last capital raise that we've had enough funds to really progress what we call the broader platform applications of the technology. And the things we're seeing there is that we've developed another form of the antibody, an alternate asset called PAT-DX3, which has differentiated pharmaceutical properties. So differentiated pharmaceutical properties, which we're starting some animal studies with that. Also, we're starting some collaborations. So we've got a collaboration with the Australian listed company Imagion, the US listed company Imagion, which is a diagnostic company. We hope that will bear some fruit. That's a really interesting program. And we're doing some other things like developing, seeing whether our technology is amenable to antibody drug conjugates. So eyes on the prize is getting to the clinic in the middle of next year, but there's a whole raft of what we call platform expansion activities that I think are equally exciting, Greg.
Yeah, it's almost like you're spoiled with choice, and the biggest problem you're going to have, for better or for worse, is to try to be targeted, or to maybe even run 2 parallel paths at the same time between DX1 and DX3, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely right. And that's always a trap for small companies to lose focus. And we are very focused on getting DX1 into the clinic, but we've surrounded ourselves with lots of good people and lots of good CROs. So we're really hoping and expecting to see some positive signals around those platform expansions.
Yeah, and James, also, if you don't mind me segueing a little bit, do you also feel like that your background in all the facets of business, within biotech, pharma / medicine, it just helps you with kind of understanding, where to focus, how to keep track, and what should be prioritized?
Sure, I think that helps, Greg. Having a strong scientific background and then having been through 2 companies that have got product on market, absolutely, and having been involved in multi-million-dollar licensing deals and transactions and sales, there's the broad suite of skills there that I think is really important. But I would say equally important is the quality of the board we've got at Patrys. And so we've got John Reed here in Australia, who's got really deep corporate experience, fantastic governance experience. Mike Stork, who's a Canadian investor who's been involved in a whole heap of startups. But the real crunch, I think, comes from Pam Klein and Susie Jones. So Pam is a clinician who's been in biotech for 20 years. She was on the team at Genentech, leading the development of Herceptin, which is one of the most successful anti-cancer antibodies. She's on the board of a European company called argenx, which is worth more than $10 billion, which is an antibody development company. So when we talk about people who understand antibodies and cancer, you really can't go past Pam. And Pam's development expertise is matched with Susie's business development expertise. Again, Susie's ex-Genentech. She has a private boutique consultancy advising on deals and transactions. So I think within Patrys, within the team, within the board, we absolutely have the skills to be very successful in what we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely, James. And it sounds like our shareholders are in a good set of hands, so to speak. And again, bringing back what you said earlier, the data really drives so much of the decision making as well. And your data so far has been outstanding. James, we try to keep the interview short. Can you just give us some closing thoughts and maybe just some closing words from yourself?
Sure. I mean, I think Patrys is a really compelling investment opportunity, and I think that for a range of reasons. We've got a novel mechanism of action. We're targeting diseases that are very, very poorly served. The ability to get an antibody across the blood-brain barrier can't be underestimated. And we've got a range of inflection points over the next 12 months as we work towards the clinic with the backup of having all these platform expansions. I think it's going to be a really exciting year for the company.
Absolutely. James, thank you very much and look forward to staying in touch.
Fantastic. Thanks, Greg. Great to talk to you.
Thank you for watching another presentation by 180 Markets. Don't forget, if you want access to thousands of ASX capital raises, head on over to 180markets.com.au, sign up, and get on board for our very next capital raise. Thanks for watching.